Julee Winterbourne, welcome to the Sacred Purpose Podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here. You are a longtime good friend. I love every conversation with you. I always come away feeling like I learned something, inspired, and also like I had a little fire lit underneath me. I'm like, oh my God, okay, let's go. I think that's your Leo energy coming through. You are the creatrix in feminine leadership archetype, but you also have that secondary archetype of the warrior. And I think that I just see so much of that healing and powerful energy just oozing through you, where you take this really beautiful work, but you also use it to really empower you, to propel you forward and get through some really beautiful times and some really challenging times. And so I'm just really thrilled that we get to share this conversation, because I feel like we have some of the juiciest, most wonderful, most potent conversations. And every once in a while, I'm like, people should hear this. So today is that day. We get to dive in. Thank you. Welcome to the show. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how we ended up here?
Thanks, Lise. First of all, I'm just super excited to be here. And it's interesting. I'm Leo sun, as you mentioned, but I also have Sagittarius in my chart. And I think that Sagittarius is part of that like warrioress energy. So it is interesting how my archetypes that we've done through your program also sort of match my zodiac stuff. I don't know where the Gemini comes into all of that because I have Gemini rising, but anyway.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I'm on there's a movie where she's like, I'm a Leo with Gemini rising. Anyways, I'm super excited to be here and looking forward to diving into this conversation. And we do have really juicy conversations where we're often like, we should have hit record on this one.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be here with you and just feeling great vibes and inspired to get to connect with your audience and just see what comes of it.
Yeah, beautiful. Like I mentioned, I think one of the really incredible things that I love about you, amongst many other things, is the way that you do move energy. You know, you are an intuitive healer, an intuitive painter, and the way you use that to process energy and transform it into something powerful and actionable, or even just grounding, right? When we are facing some challenging times or some disruption. And I think right now our collective is really facing a lot of disruption right now. There's a lot of uncertainty as within an election year, and uncertainty even with candidates and things like that. That's just something we can relate to on a collective level. But on a personal level, you know, regardless of what we're going through or how this may affect us individually, I think it's hard not to notice the collective energy also compounding that or affecting that. So I'm curious how you use that to maybe navigate, you know, moments like this.
Yeah. You know, I like to say a couple of things. I have a couple of little catchphrases, but one of them is the issues are in the tissues. And I like to make the joke that like when we're sad and we're crying, we're blowing our nose, we have the issues are in the tissues. That's kind of gross. But I also feel like the issues are in our muscles, in our cellular bodies, in our mental bodies, our emotional bodies, our physical, spiritual, our bodies are steeping in what we're going through as individuals, as small families, as communities, as a larger collective. We are, even when you try to like be kind of isolated or off the grid or any of that kind of stuff, you are still being impacted by what they call in feng shui, they call sha qi, right? So like sharp arrows.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, I have a couple of things that I like to do. I mean, I'm actually going to say something different than I normally would say, but one of my things that I've learned to do in the last 4 years is what I call catching horizons.
Oh,
What that is that's going outside. And even if I just have my little garden right here, if I can go outside and look up and see that there's a bigger world than just me. Let me get the hills in my eyesight. I'm sorry for the people in Wisconsin and Florida where you can't see very many hills.
mhm.
You can still look up and out, and there still are horizons to catch, and you still can have that opportunity to see that there's a bigger world out there and that you don't have to feel like everything is so close and so on you. So it's super grounding to me. Of course, I take my companion, Big Stella, with me everywhere I go. She's grounding, 75 pounds of blind German Shepherd mix. And it's my job to shepherd her through the world. Born blind, this dog relies on me entirely. And so she trusts me to keep her safe while we are going out and about in the world. So that's also grounding, right? Taking care of somebody else in this stage of my life. I'm an empty nester. So I'm still taking care of my little one from afar. She's grown, but we still connect and I'm still taking care of her from afar. But on the daily, Big Stella is another grounding force for me. And so I would say, besides catching horizons, it's making sure that you are also getting outside of yourself. Can you take care of somebody else? And being barefoot, like I mentioned, going out in the garden, I like to be barefoot in my garden in the morning. And I don't know if you're noticing, but all those things are free. Like they're not to anything.
Right.
It take a lot of gumption to like get motivated enough to like just walk outside and look up. And there are days when it's heavy out there, and I know I totally relate to that. But if you can take a deep breath, if you can find your own heart and then catch some horizons, be barefoot when you do it, and then also make sure that you just check in with somebody else. Those are all ways that we care for ourselves by also caring for our greater community and collective. And I just think that I'm not going to isolate myself from what's happening in the world because that's just not my character. I'm a big personality and I have a lot of friggin' opinions. So I'm going to get involved, right? But I also need to find a way to release that charge of that big energy. And so that's where my meditation comes in or journaling comes in.
Yeah.
And where I also like to take the time to get into doing the intuitive painting that I love to do, right? I mean, we talk about the name of your podcast is Sacred Purpose. And I feel like part of my purpose is to bring those things that do heal us to people, like to young people who are in foster care, to young people who are coming out of the juvenile detention, what am I trying to say? The juvenile detention places, and but also to other moms, to other working people who need to find a way to come home to themselves, to trust themselves, and to discharge that extra energy.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. No, I'm on a roll. I'm just like sitting here nodding my head, taking it all in as usual. You're on a roll, I should say.
I'm like butter.
Yeah. Agreed. I just think that, that's the thing, right? Just coming back to a grounded place before we take action because it's so easy. I think it's easy to say that we overlook the simple things. In those cases, like you said, everything is free, it's available to us. And I think it's really easy for us to overlook those simple things and to pause, take those pauses before we take action, especially when it feels like something feels urgent or somebody else has put a sense of urgency on thing before we take action from a really aligned place and a really grounded place so that we're just not adding more fuel to the fire or just more mess to the mess. And like I said, I think you're just a genius at transforming that energy into something useful in a really beautiful way. And, all the things that we, talk about impacting, it will have an impact, like you said, on those children if we can reach them that are needing, some extra tools and resources. And I think that we also underestimate the impact that some of these small choices that we have will have on say the next generation or just anybody that we come in contact with, whether it's a person on the trail or at the grocery store or, in our community. And I posted something on Instagram the other day and it was on a much bigger scale. I had just gone to a baseball game in our community and these are your neighbors that you don't really realize, and we're all sitting in a stadium and we're all cheering for the same team and we're all, the energy is up and everything feels good and people are really good to each other. And, we're all laughing online, making jokes with strangers and communing over some of the same food. And it's sort of the shame of how like that gets lost once we sometimes go out on the street. We're not shaking each other's hands, we're not nodding, we're not talking to each other. And that sense of community gets lost really, really easily. And so I think anytime we can make some mindful decisions to remember that and to bring that energy back into our community, to the people that we really come in contact every day, and not underestimate the impact that we're having there.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I have to say that when we do connect with ourselves and our humanity, it's a lot easier to then see and connect with the humanity of the people around us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it like some of our coping mechanisms that we might reach into, like I love a good glass of wine, let's be clear. Okay. I also love any kind of salty, crunchy carb. Love it. Now, I'm not saying I don't indulge occasionally, but I don't look for those to be like coping mechanisms. I
Mm-hmm.
look for things that I'm going to be grateful that I actually reached into, leaned into, right? I've never heard anybody say meditation ruined my life, right?
Right.
Nope. The recovery program from journaling that I know of
No,
anyway.
no.
Right. And so we mindfully and intentionally choose ourselves first and choose these tools. I think we are also, teaching the people around us, A, how to treat us, because how we treat ourselves, but also how they might treat themselves.
Mhm.
And in that case, I like to say, and people notice this with my kid all the time. My kid is an adult. I'm still going to call her my baby girl. But that baby child is one who also knows how to like journal through her feelings, take a walk on the beach and to get grounded for herself, right? Like because she's watched her mom move through various parts of life by using these tools, she knows that that's a solution. That's a way to go. And I think that rubs off on like her community then. I watched it even when she was as little as being in like eighth grade. What are they? Well,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
grade. And she was like the little hub for her friend group. She was a therapist already. I thought, I think you might be taking on too much. You're just a little girl, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but my community looks up to me in this way to help be a problem solver.
Mhm.
Because they knew there was a way in a safe place they could be vulnerable, and it was with her. And that she would their stories and not divulge, right? She just like you would with the therapist, they wouldn't divulge your stuff.
Yeah.
And I just think that generationally, when we do teach kids these things, they are going to teach their communities. They even if it's through osmosis, right? They just
Mhm.
happen to do it by demonstration. Like when I've gotten to work with kids, and I shouldn't say kids, young adults, 19 to 24-year-olds who are
Mhm.
aged out of the foster care system and or who have come out of juvenile detention. They don't really have the tools to heal themselves.
Mhm.
And they don't even know that they hold within them all of the healing that they're ever going to need. They don't know that until you hold a mirror to them and say, this is you. Look how you are healing yourself. And by doing that, you're breaking that generational chain and you're sharing it to your community.
Mhm.
So to me, like, yeah, I can go and work with, and I do. I love to work with other entrepreneurs. I love to work with leaders in corporate America. And I have done that and thoroughly enjoyed the experience, and they got a lot out of it as well. But when I have the opportunity to work with kids, young adults,
Mhm.
and kids, young people, 'cause I've worked with kids as young as 8. I have
Wow.
and people up to like 24 in that kind of programs that I have. But when I'm working with that younger age group, there's so much more opportunity for them to then spread their own sunshine
Mm.
by knowing themselves, by healing themselves um and walking their own path
Yeah.
and carving their own lane in a way that if I hadn't been there to do that, maybe somebody else would have picked up the torch,
Mhm.
but maybe not.
Mhm.
So that's, I mean, I feel like moving the energy and helping people and making it accessible. Breath work, like the breath work that you do is,
Mm-hmm.
again, our breath is with us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cost us anything to breathe, to get grounded, to look up, to reach out to our friends. Like all of those things we have access to.
Yeah. Okay, so you've touched on so many things. I love it. I love it. Um, I, when you talk about the next generation, but you and I both have raised daughters. We're raising the next generation of women. They are women now. They are living full lives. They are on incredible paths. And, none of this came easily. I think anybody who's raised children know that, we've been through some really wonderful times. We've been through some very challenging times. It's really incredible to see where they are now and to be a witness to that, much like you are a witness to these children that you've been able to serve. Like you said, whether or not it was you picking up the torch, you got to witness that. You got to see them grow their tools and their confidence and their ability. And what that's like as a parent, as a mother, in this over 50 age group that we are now in also, you and I both had our children young. And so maybe, we're kind of on the younger side of this, having raised these women and fairly new to being in our 50s. But I think there's this really incredible sense, and you can tell me how this feels for you, but, there's this idea that, that I have all this experience, right, and this knowledge to pass on to them, but also the way they inform me and the way they are embracing these tools and they building themselves up to be the next leaders of the world, and the way they see it, they can see further into the future than I can, right, for their lifetime. And opening up myself to not just see what I want for them, but what they want. And how do I then use that to inform how I support them and how I lead them? And I think as a parent, you can go back to when they were little and, what I thought they should be and do, right? Like what I thought their interests should be or what grades I thought they should excel in. And, all the things that sometimes we as parents consciously or unconsciously put on our children, and then learning, well, this is who they are. This is who they want to be. And this is really how I can support them being who they are, who they say they are, and, let their gifts and their ideas grow, and um, even learning from them, and how kind of being in this stage of life where I don't want to say I have nothing to lose, but like it's kind of empowering to be able to say, like we've done that. And then now we really get to focus on a bigger picture, some of the things that we even are even more passionate about, maybe be more confident in, not confident, I think maybe empowered or emboldened by, because we do have this vision that even our daughters are holding, that we are now also holding in our periphery.
Yeah. I mean, pardon me, um, having the opportunity to raise the young woman that I have gotten to raise means that when she was little, I looked at it as parenting was like a river, and I'm the banks and
Mhm.
she's water, and I'm just here to hold space for her as she flows. And sometimes that water was going to be a little lower and slower, and other times it was going to be really rapid and maybe even exceed the banks.
Mhm.
But it was never my job to stop the water. I was never dam. I was never there to raise the walls, to tell her you have to stay within these confines, right? And yes, I've given the child advice, of course, because she's my kid. And yes, I had opinions about what I think she should have been. I still think she should have been a microsurgeon.
Right.
Um, the truth of the matter is that I've just respected her,
Mhm.
raised her to be respectful back to me. And that way she knows when she walks in the world, she is respected.
Mhm.
And she commands respect, not with her voice or her actions, but just with how she walks through the world, and that she treats people respectfully, right? And I do feel like that has that has sort of created this um, energy, this dynamic, this situation where I just trust her eminently. I
Mhm.
with her whole own future, her whole
Mhm.
own reality. And I trust her to find her way, whatever that might be, and that she will always find her feet because I've taught her that, right?
Mhm.
Yes, stuff happens. You might get knocked down, knocked back, taken out, and
Mhm. Mhm.
lay on the floor.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to find your feet again. And it's interesting to watch the confidence that she has because she is empowered with that.
Mhm.
Uh, and I do feel like when I get to work with young people who maybe don't have a, a positive parent type role model,
Yeah.
not that I'm harming these kids, but that I'm giving them the sense of their elders care about them
Mhm.
and trust them with their future.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I love watching young adults um, do their thing. It's one of my favorite things to be like with my kid and her friends where I am sort of the fly on the wall and I just
Mhm.
back and or take a back seat. Is that the right thing to say? Anyways, so just sit back and witness them and listen to them and know that they give me hope. Being able to see kind of how they're moving into the world and as a middle-aged person, I feel confident that we're moving in the right direction with these young people. I think we
Mhm.
did a good job, Lise.
I think we did actually. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head though. I trust them. And I think, having a safe place to land for them, always knowing that, while they figured it out, mom was here. And I think that that's also really powerful. And, for, like you said, maybe people that don't have that in their life, what it is like to have that foundation for you, that your elders do care about you, that the community cares about you, just that sense that you do have a place to land, even if it is your own 2 feet that you learned, right? Until you can find that community that can hold you a little bit more deeply. Um, but that sense of trust both ways, I think, is really, really powerful. And I don't think you hear enough of it, quite honestly. And I think that that just resonates really deeply for me. I hope I get to have my girls on this podcast one day because I would love to hear this from their view. I mean, we have some conversations, but I think it would also be really, really fun to get their take on it. What really empowered them to feel like they can really just, like you said, hold a lot of space. I think all our girls can. They can hold a lot of space, and I do think that they are um, holding for their communities as well. They are respected and looked up to by their peers and um, are serving the world in really powerful ways while still being really true to themselves. And I think it's really very cool to watch. I
So proud. I mean, to see these young women and young men, let's be clear, I have nephews that are, kind of between our kids' age or around whatever, around our kids' age. And
yeah,
they're also like my older nephew is such a good dad.
yeah,
My God, he's such a good dad. And he's so present.
yeah,
And it doesn't come from any performative place at all. It's quiet, calm, grounded strength. And it's so beautiful to see. And I'm proud of these people that they have learned from us and they stand on our shoulders and we stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us, of course. But as we do continue to pour into these kids, maybe stuff we didn't have. Like,
hmm,
I know for sure, my mama did not trust me.
yeah, right, right,
I know that to be true. And I know that I wanted to give things to my child that I didn't have. And some of those were pretty easy to figure out.
hmm,
Trust and respect. Like
hmm,
space for her to be her whole self. Because like my older nephew, going back to him as an example, right? Like his parents held space for him to be a great young man. And ta-da, he is.
Yeah.
And you're holding space for your daughters to be great young women, and I for mine. And I think that there is a lot of fear in the world. And
Mm,
a lot of people are standing out, handing out trust. They're not like, oh, I trust you. Sure. Da, 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 right. And there's reasons for that.
right.
But also, like, when we come home to ourselves and we learn to hear ourselves, when we learn to hear our intuition and act upon it, and then that voice gets louder and louder, and we trust ourselves more and more, it is easier then to hand out trust to people. Because
Mm,
I feel like trust is an onboard thing. Like, this is, if you don't trust people, start here.
yeah.
Here, start with self trust. Because if you trust yourself to exit a negative situation,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy enough to be like, okay, I can go here. And if it doesn't go in a way that feels supportive to my divine nature or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then I get to caretake for myself by politely exiting the situation. Right. And I wish there were more people who were willing to, hand to heart, hand to belly, come home, you know, and be there with themselves so that they can make space for the healing of their own reality and their own families and their own communities and the larger collective.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. That's, I think you really, really brought that home, just that sense of people not handing out trust. I think there's a lot of us moving, not even necessarily out of fear, although there is a lot of that, but just distrust. And that brings disconnection and then discord, right? Whether we intend to or not. Um, yeah, I think maybe that's a word now. That feels like a theme. That feels really potent right now, just developing that sense of trust within ourselves and within the people that we surround ourselves with, just finding it somehow. There has to be something there, right? Where can we embody that a little bit more? Where can we find that and create that a little bit more? So that we are maybe catching ourselves where we might be holding it back, where we don't really need to. Maybe see those opportunities that maybe we've closed ourselves off to, that we're actually right there all along.
Mm.
Um,
I feel like
okay.
embodying self trust is a thing too. And when we're doing things like you and I have done a ton of yoga together, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And yoga literally means yoking the head to the body, right? So that it's all one thing. And you have to slow down. You have to get quiet. You have to be focused and present when we're doing yoga. It doesn't have to be yoga, but when you find something that feeds your soul that way, that is movement, that is a moving prayer, so to speak, and you do that thing over and over again. And it can be cooking your favorite dinner. It could be lying on the floor because you just need to lie on. This is the second time I've talked about lying on the floor. Apparently I need it. But my point is, when you find that thing that resonates with you and you're good at it and you trust yourself to do it well, doing that,
Hmm.
more of that, build that trust muscle, right? I feel like that's how we embody trust. And that's how it's not just about an abstract mental concept.
Hmm.
It's embodied, it's in us because we know how to find that thing that we're good at, that we trust ourselves to do well, and then let it grow out from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
One thing we do, we text each other pretty regularly. How is your heart today? And it's a beautiful check-in because as we know, how we really feel can change every hour, every day. But it's such a beautiful check-in to be witnessed, like how we're really doing in this moment with the understanding that this is just a moment. This doesn't necessarily define who we are, although it is who we are in that moment. And yesterday you posed a question, who are you today? Who am I today? And one of the things that you do, and I think maybe you have this phrase that turning your mess into blessings. And, I started this podcast episode saying how you just really are gifted in transforming energy. And, all this experience and wisdom that you have behind you, who are you today, and what are you calling in, right? With this sense of knowing right now, with this, sense of trust, or that is your guiding light. I don't know, maybe you tell me what your guiding light is. Um, but yeah, how are you using this today? Who are you today?
That's a good question. I feel fired up today. I'm very feisty. We're in the midst of Leo season. I am a Leo, as we've already covered. And so I'm feeling that. And that feistiness, that fieriness feels like creative energy. It feels like transformation and transition. And I am very aware that I'm in a space of transformation personally in this time, in this um, let's say year, but also in this now, in this particular time, I have this sense that something is unfolding and
Mm.
I'm trying to surrender to the dang process, which I'm terrible at surrendering.
Yeah, I can relate.
Because I mean, I feel like I've done the things to prepare. And now it's time to lie on the floor. Now it's time to surrender and trust the process, watch what's supposed to happen next, unfold in front of me, and just left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot.
Mm.
And I'm also really wanting to paint. So I feel like that's on me right now. I want to spend some time getting messy. Um, because I do feel like the messy middle is often a place where our messages come through, and then those become our lessons, and those lessons become our blessings, right? So it's this kind of process of recognizing and unfurling and unwinding and letting it be, let your belly out, like let it be messy, and I'm gonna get some paint under my fingernails, and my nail lady is gonna yell at me again, but
Yeah.
but um there's some juicy goodness in there for me.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
I love it when you say let your belly out, because I'll say something like, drop your shoulders and exhale, but then you say you'll bring it home like and let your belly out. And there's some sort of sense of like, yeah, I could you're holding a lot of something in there that really feels good to just let go and then let it
Your
be.
center is here and your
Yeah.
is right below it, like
Yeah.
that lower abdomen area. And we hold it in all the time. We're in it,
Mhm.
right? But also like, when you're feeling strong in your core, you're usually
Yeah.
in and all of that. But like when nobody's around and you just let your belly out, like that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like it's like dance like no one's watching, right? Which is a cute little meme that people like to say, but like I feel like letting your belly out is being really vulnerable and soft.
Yeah. So paint with your belly out. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know exactly what that
Like
looks
that's gonna catch on quite the same, but I get it.
like. Yeah, no, that's it. I feel like the softening, the softening of our edges and that being malleable and a kind of squishy. Um, I think that is the divine feminine,
Yeah.
being receptive and allowing and stirring. I think all of that goes together, and I arm wrestle it all the time.
Yeah.
My masculine side, right? I'm like, I will control this, and we will have things that are orderly and organized.
It's true.
And
I love to feel like I'm have a plan, or that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or what have you. And the prayer I'll always come back to when I catch myself going too hard in that direction is quite simple, but it is a lot of that release is that may I be a vessel for what I am meant for today. And it's hard to let go of that sometimes, right? That surrender, that laying on the floor saying, okay, I'm here and I'm willing. May I be the vessel of what needs to pour through me today. And may I have the courage to show up for it, or the surrender necessary to trust it, and bring it forward, um, and let go of what I might think I should be doing.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, if I swept up all the dog fur before I painted, I would always just be sweeping up dog fur.
Right.
Right. And so at some point, I have to let go of the shoulda, woulda, coulda and let myself be fully expressed, let myself be vulnerable. Painting is vulnerable. And being
Mhm.
an artist is vulnerable. Like sharing your heart is a vulnerable place to be. I don't necessarily show all of my art because
Mhm.
it's not for public consumption, right? It's my processing it. That's like sometimes I feel like showing my artwork is the same as like, here's my journal, please read. And I'm like,
Right.
well, thank you.
No.
Uh, but sometimes all of that processing comes out into something that's really interesting, and I do want to share it.
Mhm.
But even just between me and the page, there's vulnerability there to admit, to allow, to surrender to the process is even when it's nothing but me, it's still there's trepidation there sometimes. And that's
Mhm.
to come back, okay, hand on heart, hand on belly, feet on ground, like come back to that grounded self-trust, self-compassion and being available to it.
Yeah, yeah, and letting go of that judgment of what it maybe should look like, or right? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, I could keep going on forever, and I know that we will, but before we end up this episode, is there anything else on your heart that you feel compelled to share, or anything you want to leave our listeners with to?
Um, just I want to share this actually. We often think about breathing in when we're stressed, but don't forget to let it out too. Breathe out stress.
Oh,
Breathe out discord, disappointment, any of the things that you don't want to live with. Like, yeah, breathe in all the good stuff. Make sure you breathe out all the funky stuff that you don't want in there.
yeah. Oh, I love that.
In
Okay.
with the love, out with the funk. How about that?
That is a little bit more catchy. We might get that to go. That might take off. In with the love, out with the funk. Is that what you said? Okay. All right. We're gonna test that out. I love it. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I want to let everybody know that you are going to be one of the mentors inside the Abundant Leaders Mastermind, which is coming up. Anybody interested, please go check the show notes, check it out. Schedule a call. We'll tell you a lot more about it. But also to get a little bit bigger taste of working with Julee inside the Feminine Leadership Masterclass. There's a module there. She's got one of the bonus integration sessions for you waiting. So that link will also be in the show notes. You can go sign up for that and get instant access to a really, really powerful session with her, painting, moving, using mark making for manifestation, and walking her through that entire process of what that means. So go check it out, go dive into it, and you'll get that one-on-one care and attention from Julie that you won't even know that you need to be so glad you got. Where else can people find you, Julie?
Instagram, my handle is just my name, Julie_Winterbourne, or my website, which is also just my name, juliewinterbourne.com. And yeah, those are kind of the two key places that I hang out.
All right, love. Thank you so much for being here.